Hi, I'm Katrina. I'm an artist and a textile enthusiast, and here on this channel I share knitting, patchwork, mending, and reflections on slow, sustainable living. Welcome! Today I'm sharing everything I knit in 2025, but I'm not just going to share the finished objects. I'll also talk about the outcomes. What held its shape, what started pilling, what I've been wearing a lot, what I haven't been wearing, what I would knit again, and what I wouldn't knit again. Because knitting takes time, and time is the most expensive material. So I want to share some of the insights that I reached in 2025, because when you spend 40, 60, up to 100 hours on a project, you really do want it to last. You want it to keep its shape. You want it to stay looking nice for a long time. I have learned a lot in this year, and I want to share some of the things I learned with you. This is a pile of most of the things I knit in 2025. Unfortunately, it's not all of them. Some were gift knits and I don't have them here with me, but this is everything I made for myself and some of the things that I made for my partner and my kids. And it's just been a lot of experimenting. So the project that I'm probably the most happy with is this sweater, which is foundation sweater by Lene Holme Samsø. I did do some modifications on this, like the rolled hem on the sleeves and on the body. And this is knit up in one strand of Rauma Mitu, which is a combination yarn, 50% wool and 50% alpaca, held together with 2 strands of alpaca følgetråd, very thin alpaca thread from Sandnes Garn. I had inspiration photos that I had pinned a long time ago, and I kept pinning again and again, and I will show you some of the inspiration. What I was so happy with about this sweater is it's just the perfect basic. It's a raglan construction and it's a boxy shape, this very basic beige color, and I would say I wear this probably 3 times a week, 4 times a week. I don't know, I wear it every week. And it goes with everything in my wardrobe. I'm very happy with the result, but it does pill a little bit. Not as much as some of the other projects I will show you, but there is a little bit of pilling, and it's knit up on, I think it's knit up on 6mm needles, which makes it quite a quick project, but also the gauge is quite loose. Because of the softness of the yarn, there is some pilling happening, and I do have kind of like a pet peeve for pilling. I'm not a fan of pilling, but I can live with it in this project. I would definitely knit this again. I would definitely use this yarn again if I wanted to knit up something that has softness as like a high priority, but it does, because it's like quite a loose gauge and several threads of yarn held together, it's also a bit susceptible to snagging on things. I wouldn't say it's a workhorse sweater that feels very durable. It just feels more soft and cozy. I would probably make some changes on the neckline and make the neckline higher and narrower, because I feel like it kind of pulls down a little bit when I wear it. But altogether, this is my #1 project of 2025. Such good value for the price of the yarn and also the time I put into it. I feel like this was definitely worth it. So the next project that is also a win of the year is this sweater, which is the Alone Together sweater by Danish knitwear designer Lærke Bagger. And I discovered her work by borrowing her book from the library, which is called Strik. And it's such a cool book, and she's just so cool. And this is more of a guide than an actual pattern. And she has a highlight of how to make this sweater on her Instagram, and I will link that in the description. This is a very simple construction of a sweater. It's just a square panel for the back, a square panel for the front, and square sleeves. You can either knit everything flat and then seam it together, or you can just go pick up stitches and go in the round, which is what I did. And this project is knit up holding at least 2 strands of yarn together at all time, and you can alternate the colors. So you have a base color, and I chose white, and then you hold 2 strands of your base color, and then you start knitting, and then you cut one of the strands and you tie a knot and you tie in pieces of different colors to make the color variations. And I think this was so much fun to knit because it's such a It's such a free process. It's such an intuitive, almost painterly process of making the sweater and combining the colors. And I was alternating between using small scraps in a mostly white base, and then also in some parts of it I was knitting with 2 strands of colored yarn. And it's a very intuitive process where you just base it on your gut feeling. And you can use any type of yarn for this, like all kinds of scraps, acrylic scraps, mohair, wool yarn, whatever you have really. And if some of your scraps are very thin, you can do like 3 strands at a time in certain sections. But I think I did mostly 2 strands all over. And I had so much fun placing the colors in different sections. Like in this part, focused mainly on doing blues, mostly reds and pinks in this part, yellows. It's such a fun project. I would really recommend this. And this is also held up really well. It did grow a lot with blocking, so it's very oversized, but I like it. And I don't wear it as much as the foundation sweater because this is not a basic, but it's a lot of fun to wear. So I do wear it quite a lot. And I would definitely knit this again. The fun part of it is if I did it again, it would be a completely different sweater, because I would use different colors and the result would be totally different. So this is really fun because this is a project you can do again and again and again. And this was my first experience with doing kind of freehand knitting sweaters, or knitting without an actual pattern, just with a guide and just with a plan. This is knit up on 8mm needles, which makes it very quick. You could do this in, I guess, depends on how much time you have each day to do the knitting, but probably some days or a week. I think I spent like a few weeks on it, but not too much. So definitely recommend this project, and I would knit this again. Hopefully I will knit it again, because I do need to go through my yarn stash and do some stash busting. And this is a great stash busting project. And I think it's fun because it looks a bit different from other stash busting projects I've seen. And it's so free and fun. So very happy with that. The next project was a little bit of a disappointment to me, and that is this red cardigan. And I had such great expectations for this. I had pinned inspiration for months, and I was so excited, and I thought I spent a lot of time picking the right yarn and the right pattern. I was looking everywhere. I was looking through all kinds of different patterns. I ended up using the Traveler's Cardigan pattern by Ozetta, and this is not a critique of the pattern itself. It's more choices that I made, I think, and also with experience, I would have done some modifications to the pattern. But this is knit up quite literally following the pattern. And I knit this up in a very loosely spun yarn, which is called Rauma Fivel. And I knit it in with a quite big needles, I think a 5 or a 6mm, to get the right gauge. And that was just too loose for this yarn. I should have picked a different yarn because this pills like crazy. It has not held up like I hoped. So there's a lot of pilling going on, and it was just right from the beginning. After I wore it the first time, it started pilling, and I was so disappointed. It's a yarn that's really good if you want to do felting, and it's good if you want to do something where you don't care about pilling so much, or you want to knit something that's not getting so much wear as a sweater or cardigan. A lot of things I'm happy with about this one is, well, I do love the color. I'm not wearing it as much as I was expecting because I had pinned it. I had so many pins on my to make Pinterest board and outfits pinned with this specific cardigan in mind. And I ended up not wearing it as much. I have picked it up and started wearing it again. And I think I will try to do something about the pilling, like try to use a fabric shaver or a pilling comb, a cashmere comb, to clean it up a little bit. But what I do love about it is these really pretty shell buttons that I think go so nicely with the red color. And the yarn itself is fine. I have used it for a different project, which is this beanie in this beautiful dark blue cobalt color. And I wear this so much. And this is not pilled. And I think that's just because there's not rubbing going on in the same way with a beanie than with a a cardigan because it rubs on itself. The sleeves rub against the side of the cardigan, and the cardigan itself, it's like you're touching it so much more. You have maybe a coat over it that's rubbing, the fibers are rubbing against each other and creating this pilling. So I do want to knit another cardigan, but I think I'm going to try to find a different pattern, because I also feel like it's gaping a bit between the first and second button. And with this pattern, the button band is knit at the same time as the body, and you're knitting the button band on separate double pointed needles at the same time as you're knitting the body, which was a bit finicky when I was working on it. There were a lot of needles hanging about. And also I think I want to make another cardigan that has more structure, where I'm using a tighter gauge or a thicker yarn or something to make it more structured and not so loose and flowy. And also I do want to do a double knitted button band that will kind of hold everything together and be a bit more sturdy. But it was a really good experience knitting a cardigan. Only thing is, I'm not a fan of knitting back and forth, and with a cardigan you kind of have to do that. But I have looked into maybe trying steeking in the future. And maybe I will do a cardigan using steeking and knitting it in the round and then cutting it and knitting the button band. We'll see. We'll see how I get. Maybe I will be more happy with it if I clean it up a little bit and just accept that this was part of the learning process. And I've learned some things that I want to do differently next time. So in the end, I would say I am happy about it because I learned something from it. And the last sweater I knit for myself in 2025, right at the end of the year, was this light blue sweater that was my first attempt at a completely self-drafted sweater. And for this sweater I used Be Creative Knits here on YouTube's guide to self-drafting. Her video is so good, I will link it in the description. It gives you a very understandable and simple guide to how to go about self-drafting a sweater based on your measurements and the measurements you want the finished garments to be. And I'm really quite happy with the construction of this, although there are some things I'm not so happy about. This is actually also knit up in Rauma Fivel, same as the beanie and the cardigan, but it's held together with one strand of Sandnes Garn Mini Alpaca. So the gauge is really big. It's made on chunky needles, I think maybe 6 or 7 millimeter. Even though it is very oversized, it was a quick project, but the very loose gauge means that this sweater has also pilled so much. There is so much fluff going on after. Well, I have worn it a lot, but this also needs a really good cleaning up with the fabric shaver and the cashmere comb to keep it looking not so scruffy. I think I have learned my lesson with this Rauma Fivel yarn, this very loosely spun yarn, and also because the needles are chunky, this is also prone to snagging, so the yarn has been snagging a bit and it's not holding up very well. When I do put in so much time in making a sweater, I do really want it to look nice for more than a month. And this is what I'm really focusing on in 2026, is I want to make durable, long-lasting garments that look nice for a long time and not just kind of like fast fashion aspect that I think a lot of us are seeing in knitting at the moment, where you're knitting with very soft yarns and very chunky needles and it's moving fast and you finish it quickly, but then it's just not holding up when you wear it in your actual life. And to me, that doesn't feel very sustainable going forward. I mean, crafting and knitting, it's so much about learning as you go, and you really do need to experience these things, learning these things by experiencing them, so that you can go about making better choices. Going forward, I'm going to steer away from those really soft, fluffy yarns and the really chunky needles, and I'm going to try to push myself to do projects that maybe take a little bit longer to complete, with smaller needles, and that maybe don't feel as soft and fluffy, but that will actually hold up and become better over time instead of worse. So that's my takeaway from this sweater. So that's all the sweaters that I knit for myself this year. And I think we're just going to do a little bit of a rapid fire through everything else that I knit. There was this beanie knit in Rauma Fivel, and I'm so happy with this color. My next project is probably going to be a sweater in this color from Rauma, but a different yarn. But this is just so beautiful. I love this color so much. It's so rich and deep, and this pop of color, I'm wearing this a lot, and I have for most of the year. So this is a favorite. Another beanie I made was this orangey red one. I knit it for myself, but it's slowly become my partner's beanie. He wears it more than I do. This is knit in Sandnes Garn Double Sunday, which is a 100% merino wool. And this I'm also not happy with. This also pills a lot, and with wear it's just not looking so good. So I'm probably not going to be using that yarn or merino wool in general. It's so soft, but it's just not holding up, and it's a bummer. But it's a nice color, really nice with this cobalt blue as well, but not my favorite yarn, and not a yarn I would recommend if you want something that's long lasting. And I did have this yarn because I was going to knit a sweater with it, and I'm really glad I didn't, because it would look so bad after a short amount of time. So next up are some of the socks I knit. This is a pair of socks that I knit for myself using Sandnes Sisu, which is their sock yarn or a nylon reinforced yarn. And these have held up quite well. I do love wearing knit wool socks in winter, and I wear them day and night as I'm sleeping, as I'm out and about. These are quite thin, so these actually fit in my shoes as well. I would say I'm quite happy with these. I love the color. I think it's an expired color called Hyacinth Blue, which is so pretty. And it goes with the other blue things that I have, so I love that. Other socks are baby socks for my youngest boy. These yellow ones are in a merino wool, and don't remember exactly what yarn this is, but these have also been pilling a bit, but they're very soft and they don't get that much wear. So using a non-reinforced yarn for baby socks I think is fine. For an adult, I would not I would not use this 100% merino wool for adult socks, because you would wear them out so fast. But for a baby, it's fine. And the other pair of baby socks I knit are these blue ones in Sandnes Smart, which is a superwash yarn that I had some scraps and some leftovers I got at a sale. And these are fine. These can go in the washing machine, and they're pretty durable. Again, they're not reinforced, so they wouldn't last that long for adult socks, but for baby socks it's fine. But I am also trying to steer away from using superwash yarns and other synthetic yarns unless it's very necessary. So I probably won't be buying it again, but I will be trying to use up what I have left of it. I also knit some socks for my partner, but one of the socks has gone missing, so we only have the one sock. And this is also a yarn from Sandnes Garn called tresko, which is a Norwegian word for clogs. So they are meant to be super durable. It's a very rustic yarn, and it's reinforced with nylon as well. My partner wears out his socks so quickly, so I did try to find the most durable sock yarn in the world, and this is the tip I got. And they are already, I knit this at the very beginning of the year, and they are wearing out on the heel, so they do need mending. Maybe we will get to that in another video, but in general they've held up quite well with all that wear. So I would definitely recommend this yarn if you're going to knit some very chunky socks, but they don't have that many color options in this yarn, so it's just a very basic color palette is available. And then I made some mittens for my oldest boy, and these are knit up in Rauma Vams, which is a very thick unspun yarn, which is 100% wool, and it's recommended to use for felting. And I wanted to just knit up some mittens that he could have at school, and just like really the ultimate goal was just to keep warm. So these are just a simple pair of self-drafted mittens. I would use this yarn for a similar project in the future, or for a felting project if that was something I had planned. I would not knit a sweater in this yarn because that would look so bad after a short amount of time. Next up is this very cute little baby cardigan, and this is knit up in Du Store alpaca tweed, and this is very, very soft. It is pilling and fluffing a bit, but that is to be expected from this very soft yarn, but it's not holding up. It's not going to be an heirloom, but I do think the tweed speckles are kind of masking the pilling a little bit, so it's not that much of a problem, and at least it's very warm and it's very soft for a baby, so I'm quite happy with this. It didn't take too long, and it was also a learning experience using the alpaca yarn and seeing how it holds up over time. Lastly, I have two baby cotton sweaters. This one is knit up in Viking yarn, Viking Vår, which is a 100% cotton yarn. This one is also knit up in a 100% cotton yarn, but this is the Drops Paris yarn. And these are both very simple self-drafted raglan sweaters. I tried to do it by copying the measurements of other sweaters for my youngest boy, other sweaters that he already had that fit him. And I can tell a very big difference in quality in these two yarns. They are quite similar both in price and in weight, but the Viking Vår is looking very worn and very kind of matted, and the surface of the fabric has become quite matte and almost felted. The surface of the fabric has all these little signs of wear that happened really quickly, while the Drops Paris yarn has held up so much better. Still, there is some signs of wear on the surface, but in general, I think it's held up a lot better. So if you're looking for a very cheap cotton yarn to do a garment, I would definitely use this instead of this. But isn't this so cute? This was like a summer project, and I really love this color combination of the beige, kind of cornflower blue, and then the cobalt blue. And I would definitely like to do a version for myself so we could be twins. In 2025, I did knit more than what I've showed you now, but some of it were gift knits. So I knit a few headbands as gifts for my friends' children. I knit a balaclava for my friend's daughter. I knit a balaclava for my youngest boy, but he's wearing it now and he's not here. I also did knit a sweater for my oldest boy in the same yarn as the blue socks, so that is the Sandnes Smart, and that's held up really well. I think that's a good yarn for kids' clothes that you need to be able to put in the washing machine. So that completes all my knits from 2025. I did learn a lot this year. I experimented a lot. I'm really happy with the way I've progressed in my knitting and in my material knowledge. So that is definitely something I'm going to bring into 2026. Some very specific things I feel like I learned this year are that I trust tightly spun yarns more than fluffy yarns in terms of durability. I think I learned that structure matters more than trends. I can keep improving, I can keep learning, and when I spend so much time working on projects, I do really want to plan them out before and choose my materials carefully and with intention. And I value durability over novelty. That's really important to me now. And what I'm choosing to do differently in 2026 is I'm going to let my experiences from the previous year guide me in choosing the right types of yarn. And I've learned so much about this. I'm probably going to do fewer projects, but plan them out more thoroughly and put more intention into every decision that I'm making. Going forward, natural fibers are going to be my top choice, and I'm going to try to steer away from superwash yarns and from synthetic blends. And I'm also probably going to try and steer away from wool blends like wool alpaca blends or alpaca yarns or merino wool. And I'm going to try to really focus on working with 100% wool yarns that are tightly spun and will hold up over time. The next project I have in mind, I have been already working on swatches and trying out different types of yarn, including Sandnes Garn Per Gynt, which is a 100% wool yarn, and Rauma 3-ply knitting yarn, which is also a tightly spun, even tighter spun 100% wool yarn. And those yarns are made from the fleece of Norwegian sheep. And the Norwegian sheep are bred for a tougher climate, which means they have longer fibers that are less prone to pilling. It does also mean that it's prone to be itchier and more prickly, but they do also soften over time. So my next project is going to be a self-drafted sweater where I'm using the 100% Norwegian wool yarn to make a sweater that will look better and feel nicer with wear and with time than some of my knits from the previous year, which looked really nice and fluffy and soft right off the needles, but then quickly deteriorated and started looking bad. I want to do the opposite in the coming year. I want to make garments that improve with wear instead of decline. So more natural fibers and more mending. I love mending, and I'm probably going to do a video soon about mending knitwear, which is one of my favorite things to do. It's so calming and relaxing and rewarding. So better yarns, fewer projects, and more mending and more natural fibers. That's the plan going forward. Thank you for spending your time here. I'm interested in textiles not just as craft, but as part of a sustainable and slower way of living. If that resonates with you, please consider subscribing. What was your favorite project of 2025? Tell me in the comments. I read every single comment and I would love to hear from you. Also, do you have any takeaways, things you learned in the past year? What did you experience? And what do you want to do differently when it comes to your knitting projects? I'll see you in the next one. Bye!